What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, Kansas City? And what is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Beat of KC. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a phenomenal guest on. I can't thank him enough for coming on. This is absolutely incredible. Jordan Foote, a writer from SI Chiefs, absolutely incredible. Knows his stuff. I watch a lot of his stuff. I tell you guys, this is an incredible opportunity. Jordan, thank you for coming on, my friend.
Man, Lucas, thank you for having me on. I'm super excited to chat with you.
That's awesome, man. Super excited for this. I really, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I anticipated this all day. I'm like, 9 o'clock can't come fast enough. I was looking forward to talking to you, man. I really was super excited to talk Chiefs, and we'll dive right into that. So, with that being said, obviously the draft has come and gone. We did rookie mini camp. We're kind of dabbling into OTAs. We're seeing some players really get out there and clang and bang a little bit. From that perspective, we're going to talk rookies and kind of the draft first. The first question I have for you, and I've asked this to a few of my guests, which is your favorite and why?
Oh man, I think Cornell Powell in round 5,
Okay.
and Trey Smith in round 6 is obviously a good one. But Powell, man, he's a guy that could by the end of the year, or at least next year, at the beginning, be that starting X for the
Yeah.
Chiefs, and like that's really hard to find in round 5. There were a bunch of guys, man, like because Diami Brown was still on the board for a little bit, Amonra St. Brown was still on the board. Like there were guys that everyone kind of pegged to the Chiefs, saying if the Chiefs get those guys, they could be okay or whatever. Cornell Powell was a guy that was kind of that tier below, but even because I did that 100 scouting reports in 100
Yeah.
days, insane thing.
Yeah.
And Powell was one of those guys. And I was like, man, he's good, but he was a 5th-year senior. He didn't break out until the second half of the season. Like, could he be a better pro than he was a college player? Sure. And then he ended up in Kansas City. So then I went back and I was like, this guy has a lot of traits that the Chiefs want out of that position that McCall Hardman, he just can't do. Hardman
Yeah.
is a slot guy through and through. Byron Pringle is 27, 28. He clearly isn't going to get that opportunity. DeMarcus Robinson is what he is. So
Yeah.
I think that Powell, not only right now, in terms of doing the little things, getting on special teams, stuff like that, but also long term, he's going to get some really good value throughout that rookie contract, I think.
For sure. That's definitely one of my favorites. And I was waiting to see how you would answer. And the reason I say that is because um if that's the case, do you think a lot of his basically his development and how he came through Clemson, do you think a lot of it is because of the good quality reps he was able to receive while he was at Clemson? Because he's had Trevor Lawrence thrown to him. I mean, the level of games that they were in preparation for multiple time, championships and going to the postseason and things like that. Do you think a lot of those reps were good quality, and that's kind of also what helps transition him to play for the Kansas City Chiefs, and maybe why he was a good fit?
I think so. And also just the measurables. I mean, he's 6 foot, 210 pounds. That's going to help
Yeah.
him. A good athlete. But the weird thing is, he did most of his damage when Trevor Lawrence was out because of the
Yeah.
whole COVID thing. Like, that
Yeah.
was awkward. It was weird that he was a 5th-year senior and took so long to break out and is now 23, 24 years old, what have you. But he got world class instruction at Clemson. He got world class opportunity finally. They just had a bunch of talent ahead of them, and that's the case with a lot of guys where they don't break out until later because they're just at really good teams. And you have guys like Alabama has had players that make a statement sophomore year, junior year. So it's not always the case, but
Yeah.
that definitely prepared him. And I think that if there's any team that can take a guy who is smart and make him the best possible version of himself, the Chiefs are at the top of that list. Like, they've proven that they have the world class coaching staff. They have Andy Reid, who's a mastermind. He's going to get prepared and he's going to get the opportunity, I think. And when those two meet, you get a pretty good product. So I'm pretty excited for it.
For sure. And like I said, I definitely was excited from an offensive standpoint. Anytime we took a piece, we're going to dive into a little bit of Noah Gray. But yeah, I could not agree more with Powell. And, a lot of the people I talk to, honestly, that's one of their favorites. And for us to get him where we got him, I think that is a huge bonus. So that kind of leads me to this next question. And I'm super excited to ask you this one because it actually is fun. So if you could take one player from our draft and replace them with someone else, because I know you did the 100 and 100. If you could replace them with someone else, who would you remove and why? And then who would you add in their replace?
Oh man, now I have to remember how the board fell too. So I guess I'm kind of showing my least favorite pick. Um, and it doesn't mean I don't like it. It's just that out of all the great picks they had, this one I was like, nah. Nick Bolton, probably take him off and
But
replace him with, man, there was so much good talent there. I would say like one of those wideouts like Diami Brown, but then you would have Cornell Powell and Brown have two wideouts. So that's a tough question, but off the top of my head, considering the board, I think that's probably what I would go with.
my the reason I asked that is because it transitions to kind of my thing. I was so excited because it seemed like we had Marshall there. And a lot of people were high on Marshall, but the one that I truly wanted them to take was Perkins
Mm-hmm.
from Oklahoma. I thought he fit so well, and I was like, please, please take him. After the draft occurred and you get to actually see Nick Bolton even more, you're kind of like, okay, but I would have to agree. I probably would have taken him off, and then in return, I would have put Perkins there. And then I think, the rest of it I really like. And even with Bolton, I still really like it. But I
Mm-hmm.
like that question because it does kind of put you on the spot. It really makes you think. And it's just kind of like, man, I don't know because when it first got proposed to me, I was like, man, that's tough because I do like Trey Smith. I really
Mm-hmm.
like Trey Smith. My favorite pick so far was Noah Gray, and I think we're definitely going to talk about him, but I think he fits very well. What do you think about? I guess we'll dive into Noah now. What do you think about Noah and like his tangibles and what he provides coming from Duke? Coming from there.
I like that pick a lot, man. I
Yeah.
think that he's going to be a really good complement to Travis Kelsey. And the fact that he's been getting reps with the ones in practice or half and half or whatever it is, whether it's because some guys aren't there,
Yeah.
Kelsey wasn't there, they want to give him the opportunity or whatever. Like, I think it was Kent Swanson at Arrowhead Pride made a really good point. They're not wasting those reps on just anybody. Like, you have Patrick Mahomes, you're going there to do work. You're not going to give some random player like your fifth string tight end or the practice squad guy first team reps. So they
Yeah.
obviously feel really good about Noah Gray. I like him in that H-back role, which they kept Michael Burton, who's the
Hmm.
fullback, which I was kind of iffy on. I thought that Gray would be like that de facto fullback, but man, his route running is impressive.
Yes.
Um, it's not just because he was wearing 87 and did the little head fakes and stuff, not to compare him with Travis Kelsey, but he just finds ways to get open. He's intriguing after the catch. He's a pretty decent athlete. There's nothing spectacular about him, but considering the black hole the Chiefs have had at tight end too over the past couple of years, I never thought that we'd be taking Demetrius Harris of all people for granted and kind of longing for him. I think that Noah Gray is going to be a really good player, and he's definitely one of my favorite picks because I didn't get to scout him. I didn't spend a lot of time on tight ends
Yeah.
because I didn't think they'd take one, but he was towards the top of my list of guys like, hey, if you're going to take one, this is probably the one you'd want to go for.
For sure. And all I hope is that he is better than Stonehands Harris. Please be better than Stonehands Harris. But I do really like. I think the biggest thing is you see the tangibles and really kind of like a mirror. I'll say it because I like the aspect. I'm almost a mirror of Travis Kelsey. Now, has he played in an NFL game yet? No. And have we even really seen him pass rookie camp and maybe a few routes in OTAs? I get that, but I think everything from size to really where, like you said, routes, even we're starting to see a good mimic of what, Travis Kelsey was coming into the league. So I really do like that. But I think the versatility is even better. Like, I think we will see him on special teams. It's going to be crazy to see. Instantly thought like a double tight end in the backfield next to Mahomes because we
Mm-hmm.
always like to run that little shovel pass to Kelsey. Maybe they pump fake it and then do a dump. I mean, the opportunities for a Noah Gray are incredible. So super excited. You kind of hit on it a little bit. There was a video put out today of Orlando Brown, saying punch it in, and we see that play develop. one of the biggest things we saw was how the offensive line was kind of laid out. We do see Noah Gray running with the first team. I wasn't super like overly like, holy cow, Noah's out there with the first team. I was more kind of like, okay, let's see how that offensive line is looking. So I do think they had Orlando Brown. Obviously, he's the one the video is focused on. They had Joe Tooney. They had Humphrey starting at center. They had Long, and then they had Rimmers. What are your thoughts on just that right there? Do you think that's could potentially be our starting offensive line? Do you think Niang sneaks in there at right tackle? What's going on with LDT? Let's just kind of go over the offensive line.
Yeah, man, I think that is going to end up being the week one starting offensive line. And personally, I would start Niang over Mike Remmers at right
Okay.
tackle. Not that I don't like Mike Remmers. I think he played above expectations for me personally last year at right tackle. He was actually pretty good. But with LDT, it's weird that a guy that hasn't played in a couple years and a guy that was reportedly so excited to come back hasn't been out there and has he even reported. I don't think he has to the OTAs, or he's been working out but not on the field, or some weird thing.
Yeah.
It's just odd. And he has the no trade clause, so he would have to waive that in order to find a different team. And then would the cap hit be worth it? It's you can go down that rabbit hole and it's really weird. Then on the flip side, Kyle Long, who took a year off of football, is in great shape now, got healthy, got his mind right, ready to go again. I think he can step in and play at right guard. Heck, really, you could even put him at right tackle if you really had to, but I'm
Yeah.
just fine with him at that right guard spot. And Creed Humphrey up the middle. Austin Blythe is on a cheap deal. He's a replacement level player, pretty
Yep.
much, whether it's at right guard or center. The right guard situation's fine. I think Humphrey takes that spot. He's a high draft pick. He's a smart player. He's a good player. He's getting first team reps. Like that
Yeah.
means quite a bit this early in the
Yeah.
offseason. So, not that Austin Blythe can't do it, but Creed Humphrey, one of the smartest guys in this class. Like if anyone can step in and get the playbook down, and Mahomes is already adjusting to him snapping left-handed. Like they're talking like he's going to be the guy. Now, the further right you get on the offensive line, the less um, solidified and confident, at least I am in the
Yeah.
picture. But if you have to choose between Niang and Remmers, I think you maybe start Remmers. But then the thing is, like, if Niang works his way in, that means that someone else was either hurt or bad. So,
Yeah.
because ideally the five you start week one are the five you stick with all year. So does Niang sit for a second season in a row? How does that work out? Is he a swing tackle? What happens there? So personally, I think right guard, there's still a competition, but I'd lean Kyle Long, and then at right tackle, I still think it's somewhat up for grabs, but Remmers seems to be the familiar favorite right now.
Most definitely. And, I think I really like that. Like you said too, if Niang happens to sit out another year, that kind of, puts a question in because, we expected him to at least do that. But I think what makes me most excited, and everyone obviously, it's tough. I went back and watched, the highlights, kind of a mic'd up from Travis Kelsey and Patrick Mahomes that was put out by NFL a couple days ago, and to see how Patrick Mahomes was just scrambling. I mean, it was just to hear the impacts and some of the things that were going on in that mic'd up. It was almost kind of very upsetting more than what it was. And I think that by reassuring the depth that we have now with this offensive line, I'm just super excited to just see it perform. And I know a lot of people are, just because you go out and you trade for an Orlando Brown, who I think is going to just be an incredible, not that Eric Fisher wasn't, but I think Orlando Brown's going to take it to the next level. Super excited about this line. So now this next piece, we saw Correa get cut today. I was actually excited about that signing. I've kind of tracked him when he was with Tennessee. I think he was with Baltimore first, Tennessee, and then Jacksonville, and then Kansas City. I really actually liked it for depth. I thought he would have been a good piece, but I think that move signifies a little bit more. I think some people on social media, they tend to do that quite a bit. Reach. I saw, hey, this could be the move for Julio Jones. I don't think that's the case, but this kind of leads me to another kind of like exciting question. So if you were the Chiefs GM right now, obviously if you were Brett Veach's shoes, and you could make a move, what move would you do? Would you trade? Would you sign or sign? And what would you do and who would it be?
Do I have to worry about cap?
We'll say no. No.
Oh man. If I don't have to worry about the salary cap, then I'm trading for like Xavier Howard
Okay.
or like one of the top corners, probably.
Okay.
If I do have to worry about cap, people they don't like the Richard Sherman move to the Chiefs because it's a different system and scheme fit, and he's 30 whatever. So I get that,
Yeah.
but he's such a smart player that
Yes.
if you needed him to press and fit into the Chiefs system, I think he could probably do that. He wants to win. If I don't have to worry about money, I'll throw him similar to the deal he got in San Fran, where he
Okay.
can base it on incentives and stuff like that.
For
Because the
sure.
odds of him reaching that in terms of Pro Bowls and games played and stuff like that, he can get playoff performance like just playing bonuses or whatever. But in the capless world that we're living in right now, I'll just give him whatever you can write blank checks to any of these players. But I think the Chiefs' biggest need, Julio would be nice. Like maybe they could trade for a DeAndre Hopkins or something, but like somewhat realistically,
Yeah.
I'd probably get a top flight corner that's
Okay.
left either by trade or free agency. They just don't have a bunch of other holes on the team. Like they're just a well built, deep team at several position groups. Like maybe get a premier edge rusher or something
Okay.
like that. But cornerback or edge are probably my top two, and then probably wide receiver behind that.
Awesome. So I really wanted to see how you answered, because now the question is, do you feel that we are lacking a little bit in the cornerback position? Is the depth not to your satisfaction? I know a ton of people want Breland to come back. I personally, I like where our corners are at. I think that it has enough youth in L'Jarius Sneed, Bo Keys. I still think, there's I would you say Rhodes is, it's not Rhodes. Who'd we go out and get from Minnesota?
Mike Hughes.
Mike Hughes. Mike Hughes isn't necessarily, he's a little younger, but not super young.
Mhm.
But I think we're a little bit younger than some of the corners, other teams out there that have corners. So would you say you want to add another piece at that position because of the depth and how we're kind of lined up?
So it's funny you ask that. I just wrote an article. Check that out on arrowheadreport.com. It was about the Chiefs cornerback group and how for the past 4 or 5 years they don't invest in that group in
No.
terms of money. They've been bottom five in the league for like since 2017, since Veach took over, and even I think a little bit before that, like a year or two before. But they just don't. Like they get these fourth round picks, these undrafted free agents. Ward was an undrafted free agent. They get guys like DeAndre Baker, who he could potentially come back and offer a little bit of depth. L'Jarius Sneed, fourth round pick. Rashad
Yeah.
Fenton, sixth round pick. Breland was their only big, quote unquote, big. They really didn't spend much on him at all. Free agent guy. Now without that, like I'd feel great about the cornerback position if Breland was back. Without it, I'm fine. Like I
Yeah.
don't think it's a major glaring weakness, but on the flip side of that, Ward's your number one, potentially. Sneed, I mean, it's just you're throwing Sneed out there based on 9 games. Two, if you're counting him on the outside, or maybe even one game. He played predominantly in the slot. So I love the Jerry Sneed. Like I was in on him when he got drafted. I'm super excited about him. But there's a small bit of risk involved there. DeAndre Baker broke his leg. That's pretty risky to come back, and he wasn't a lockdown player before that. Bo Peep Keys played 1 game last season. Mike Hughes hasn't
Yeah.
panned out for a reason so far and hasn't been able to stay healthy. So you're just kind of relying on a bunch of uncertainties. But like if Ward can play at Ward level and stay healthy because he had that broken thumb or whatever last year, he's a
Yeah.
fine cornerback. Steed is going to probably be okay. I like Rashad Fenton a lot. I think if you put him in the slot, he's going to be an average player, and I'm perfectly fine with that. They have
Thank you.
Yes, I'm a huge Rashad Fenton fan. Didn't they
I there
get
for a
Will
while. I felt
Parks?
like I was the only one. Honestly, I
No,
felt
dude,
like I was the only
he's
one.
great, and he's kind of like, I don't know why people don't like him. He's gotten tested, and when he gets in the game, he does well, whether it's on the outside or in the slot. Like, he's not anything fancy. He's not a great player, but in his role, he does well. And I think they signed Will Parks from Denver, and he
Yeah,
can play a little bit of slot. So they've got bodies. Like, depth is not necessarily a problem, but reliable depth is. But personally, I'm just kind of ignoring the panic button. Like, I'm not even looking at it. I'm okay with the group they have. I'd feel better if Breland was there. That's a whole nother rabbit hole that we can go down.
for
But
sure.
I think they're going to be okay.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear because I know even if necessary, the Honey Badger can plug in there if need be at corner as well. I know
Hmm.
he's played that a
Yep.
little bit. So, I'm glad you brought up the Fenton thing because I like his aggressiveness. I liked when he was coming out. I think he is a great physical corner. He seems to make some decent moves reflecting and mirroring the receivers at
Hmm.
times. I do think, he does show some of his youth at times, but I mean, I'm okay with that as long as he stays consistent with who he is as a player. And
Yep.
I really like Fenton. I just know there's a lot of, people out there that just bash him. And I'm like, man, I don't know about all that. So, um, now this next piece we're going to talk about kind of transitions us back to the offense. Pro Football Focus. I know some people are questioning their
Whew.
ability these days because of that safety list they put out. But I was really kind of excited to really talk about this. I heard today on 810 in the morning, they were really talking and discussing about they put out the top 100 list of players. And then as I was kind of diving through and reading that, I saw Pro Football Focus put this out, and it was their ranking of all 32 NFL receiving cores ahead of the 2021 season. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to go ahead and say, are at number 3, I do believe. Let me double check. Yes, number 3. So I don't know. Have you seen the list? I wanted to ask you if you've seen the list.
Does that include Kelsey? I have not seen the list. Is it
Okay.
just wide receiving groups?
So it does include Kelsey.
Okay.
So now the reason why I'm glad you haven't seen it because I'm going to ask you if you can guess the two teams that are above them. And I'll tell you they're
Uh,
both. I'm gonna give you some hints. They're
okay.
both in the NFC. And one plays in the NFC South and one plays in the NFC East.
One of them is Dallas. It's got to be.
Yeah,
Okay. Um, the other one has got to be Tampa, right?
correct. So yeah,
Okay.
so Tampa's number 1, and then Dallas is number 2, and then the Chiefs are number 3, and they did include Travis Kelsey in their write up. So the reason I'm asking you this is, do you agree with this? And would you put those two above the Kansas City Chiefs with Travis Kelsey being included?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Dallas may be a little bit overhyped. I'm not too familiar with their depth at tight end or wideout. But Tampa, they just won the Super Bowl. Like, it's
Yeah,
hard to go against that. They have Mike Evans, they have Chris Godwin, they have Gronk, they have Scotty Miller, they have AB. Like, they're clearly above the Chiefs, I think. Had the Chiefs retained Sammy Watkins based on the hype around Sammy, even though he's always injured pretty much, which is unfortunate. He's still
yeah,
a good player when healthy, but I think a year from now, if the Chiefs get a jump from McCall Hardman and Cornell Powell proves to be a reliable piece, they could be in contention for that number 1 spot. Like, Hill and Kelsey gets you quite a bit
yeah,
of pull in terms of those lists. So you're kind of nitpicking in terms of, well, should they be 4? Should they be 6? Should they be
yeah.
1? Whatever, whatever. But I think 3 is a pretty good spot to be in, considering they lost their number 2 receiver.
I would have to agree. When I was going through this, I was a little bit kind of like on the fence with the Dallas. I completely understand why Tampa's there. I mean, if you really do go look, I mean, yes, Gronkowski's getting towards the end, but it's Gronk, and he did score 2 touchdowns, I believe, against us in the Super Bowl. No, that was Antonio Brown. But I think when you have Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, I mean, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin. I
Yeah.
mean, that right there is pretty lethal. I mean, it really, really is. And then you're talking Dallas when you got, I think Michael Gallup stayed, Amari Cooper, CD Lamb. And then for me, that's where it starts to fall off. So I was able to name, off the top of my head, like 3 So that's where I think the Chiefs could have potentially surpassed them, but it is what it is. I thought it was fun. Definitely wanted to ask you that. Now the final thing of football before we transition a little bit, do you think that the Chiefs need to add? I know we kind of said that the team looks pretty solid. I would have to agree. I really don't think we have any glaring needs. But do you think because a lot of people want a DN signed, whether it is a Justin Houston, a Melvin Ingram, like people want and feel like we need a DN. Do you feel the same way? And would you even want either of those two?
I don't. I think that what people don't consider with DNs, especially in the cheap system, is if they needed a run defender on first and second down, they had Mike Dana. They could put Mike Dana out there. If they needed a guy with some juice that can rush the passer on third down, they have Taco Charlton coming back. They have Josh Kando, who that's pretty much all he does right now is just give effort and try to rush the passer. So I'm not worried about situationally them figuring that out. What they need is like a three down Frank Clark type where he can set the edge on downs 1 and 2, go all out on third down. But Chris Jones playing on the edge, like by signing Jaron Reed, Jones looks slimmed down. He's going to be on the edge on first and second down. That's not only going to give a guy that can set the edge. I'm worried about him maybe being disciplined in his gaps because he's kind of always freelance against the run a little bit.
Yeah,
But it's like Mike Dana is a fine player, but Chris Jones is as good probably as a run defender, even on the edge. And then on third downs, or I guess even second and long stuff like that, Chris Jones is going to be a significant upgrade as a pass rusher. So this year, I think they're going to be okay. They're going to have to learn how to brush with four. Like their Spags is really aggressive with blitzes. Like Snead out of the slot was very aggressive. Matthew had some blitzes, but they're going to have to get pressure with four. And
yeah,
that's hard. I know it's difficult. Hopefully, Frank Clark is a little bit healthier this year. Who knows what's going on with him? Jones is going to help. Wharton is hopefully going to make a leap or at least be what he was last year. I'm a little worried that he's going to sizzle out just because he's a small guy that
yeah,
doesn't have a ton of moves, but they have a bunch of bodies there. It's just a matter of dialing up the right packages and stuff to get the most out of them. Now, next year, when Frank Clark is possibly off the books, then the cupboard's extremely bare. Then you're hitting the panic button because that's literally a glaring weakness. But for 2021, I think they'll be relatively okay.
yeah. And I like the idea. I mean, because if you think about it, Chris Jones with his sack history and really kind of just how he plays, you got Derek Nottie, you got Jerron Reed, and then you got Frank Clark, and then obviously those two I named last had career years next to each other up in Seattle. So just from that perspective, it really excites me just to see that because I feel that was a big, I guess, a big kind of glaring thing for me was our pass rush ability last year during certain games. And I think obviously it's just the way I feel, but I think Frank Clark needs to focus on more than one move of that being just a bull rush. That's kind of nitpicking, obviously, but I just that's kind of my thoughts with him. I don't necessarily disagree that he's been the worst trade in some aspects, but there's a lot of people out there that say, he has been an epic failure. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely wanted to touch on that. And definitely see how you thought about that because again, people are pressing extremely hard, saying we need to get Justin Houston, we need to get Melvin Ingram in here, and I'm like, pump the brakes just a little bit. I like how we're looking, and so I just wanted to see what your thoughts were.
Yeah, they're a Super Bowl caliber team, and people just want them to improve at every single
Yeah,
facet. When in reality, you can only sign so many guys for so many spots, and if you sign Justin Houston, then that means Mike Dana's development gets stunted. Josh Kando possibly doesn't get any snaps this year. Like it's a domino effect. Then
yeah,
is the orange really worth the squeeze or whatever the phrase is it really worth it for them to do that? Which it's not like Houston's in his prime. It's not like Melvin Ingram is a prototypical Spags guy. So
yeah,
it's a good sentiment. I think that people are trying to um, demand that the Chiefs do stuff like that, but
yeah.
I think they're okay.
For sure, and I would 100% have to agree. I think this is I get excited. I was really excited going into the Super Bowl year, the first Super Bowl where we won training camp. And then obviously I was, super excited about the going into training camp last year into the Super Bowl. But I think of all of the ones now that I've had time to reflect, I think this one I'm most excited about, as crazy as it sounds, because I think they've addressed the depth thing so much across the board for the most part. Like I do kind of agree with the cornerback stuff, but I think we've addressed the depth so much at offensive line and receiver is looking good. I mean, the list goes on that I think going in, even if we do experience an injury, I think they're ready to the next person's ready to step up and jump right in. So I think that's what I'm most excited about from this team is that I think we are prepared to go in and go 20-0. I mean, what do you think about that? 20-0.
Like, what did people expect Mahomes to say? Like, he's not going to say, "Oh, I personally want to throw for 56 touchdowns or 57 or whatever the record is. I want to break the touchdown record, or I want to throw for 6,000 yards, or I want to do this." He was going to say something team related. He was going to say he wanted to win every game. He was going to say he wanted to win a Super Bowl. Like, what else were people expecting? So then, of course, all the national media outlets cut the, "Oh, I'm focused on one thing and it's winning every single game." Oh, well, then he's selfish, then he's unrealistic, blah blah blah. No competitor is going to say, "Well, I want to go like 18-2, or I want to win like 13 regular season games just so we know how to lose a little bit." Like, no one's going to say. I can sit back and say, "I'd wish they'd lose one game so then they could come back and not have that pressure," but there's no mathematical thing that says winning one game makes it harder to win two in a row, winning two makes it harder to win. Like, if they get that far, they get that far, and it's going to be
Yeah.
great. And if they don't, they don't. But what did they expect him to say? Like, literally, it was the most predictable answer, considering the type of guy he is and considering the nature of the what hasn't he already done
Yeah.
in 3 short years or four, or however long he's been there. So it was very predictable, and also people overreacting. But that's Twitter and sports culture and hot takes and sensationalism, and that's for your journalist 101 podcast, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I mean that's when he said it, I obviously thought the exact same thing. I'm like, he is probably one of the biggest competitors. I mean, and the reason I say that too is because you see him and Travis Kelsey golfing in his 15 and Mahomes charity tournament, and they got a bet on who can get out of the sand. I mean,
Yeah.
the competitive level is there. There's no question. And do I really think he believes he can go 20-0? I do believe he thinks he can go 20-0, and I think he wants to accomplish that. I mean, who doesn't? Like you said, the competitive edge is there, but that is going to be his answer. I mean, let's be real about it, because I do think Tom Brady said the same thing. Like, the greatest of all time isn't going to be like, oh yeah, I think we're going to go, 11 and whatever this year. We're going to lose a couple games. Yeah, I think it was overhyped, and it's that time of the football season. Well, the time in the off season where it does get a little dry and people are trying to find things, and I think this was perfect timing for that. So it's just one of those things. It kind of reminded me, I do have one more question, football related, and it is about the schedule. And it's going to be kind of chopped up into a little bit of a part. Which game do you feel is going to be kind of contest us the most, one of the most challenging? I'll give you mine first, and then which game do you think is going to have the most hype around it, where more than just that team in Kansas City is going to be that honed into it? The one that I think is honestly going to be the most important or most impactful is going to be the Cleveland Browns. I think that first game is going to be extremely, extremely challenging, because talking about a team who went out and really addressed depth, who really focused in on a defense, has some young linebackers in Mac Wilson. They go and draft the kid from Notre Dame. I think he might be a hybrid a little bit, but they still go
Mhm.
draft him. They know that offensive line they have one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL, if not the best. And so I think that is going to present a problem. Do you agree with that? And if not, what team do you think is going to be that type of game?
Yeah, no, that was second on my list. I think the one that to kill two birds with one stone has the most hype and is going to be the most challenging, assuming a certain somebody is still with that team at that point is going to be the Green Bay game. I mean, it's going to be insane. Rodgers is going to be amped up. It's the whole oh my god, they're finally playing each other thing. Assuming he's there, that's going to be tough. But the games that I think the Tennessee game could potentially be a trap game in
Yes.
that they've always given the Chiefs trouble. And then I forget what week they play. The Chargers in Los Angeles later in the season. I think it's like week 14 or something. They're
Yeah,
going to be fighting for a wild card spot at that point. The Chiefs are probably going to be riding a winning streak. I could see them running into some trouble there. But in terms of the biggest challenge, I think Cleveland would be a very close second for me. But
yeah,
Green Bay, not only the hype, but also the second best quarterback in the NFL, probably coming into town. That's going to be a tough one.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's going to be a huge question mark. I think Rodgers is definitely, got his stance, and rightfully so. I mean, it's crazy what they've done, with
Mm-hmm.
Brett Favre, now obviously Aaron Rodgers, and it's just I hope that he is doing it because I would like to at least see it. Because obviously last time it was Matt Moore and Aaron Rodgers, and they just didn't have that hype.
Toe to toe,
Uh,
baby. Toe to toe.
so the final schedule question from a fan perspective, is there any game that you are just like, I want to see these players play against the Chiefs? Is there any, whether it is in person or even on TV? And mine, honestly, I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan. I'm excited to see the Eagles. Obviously they're getting Devonta Smith there. They got Jalen Rieger. Obviously, hopefully they finally give the reins to Jalen Hurts and let him do his thing. Is there a game that you're just like kind of fanning out and you're like, I'm just excited to see this game?
I think it's the Cleveland game for me. I'm
Really?
I'm a big I am a huge Baker Mayfield guy. I've always supported him. I think that he there's a double-edged sword there. Yes, I support him, but also I'm kind of real about him. Like he's never going to be a star quarterback, I don't think. But or I guess superstar. He could be a really, really good quarterback, and that with that roster can win you a Super Bowl guaranteed. But they're going to go as far as he takes them this year. I think the rest of the team is ready. It's just a matter of is he, and he balled out in the first half of that Chiefs playoff game. He played a lot better in the second half of last season. Getting Odell back is going to be interesting. So I'm kind of a player fan more than a team fan.
Yeah,
Now that I kind of have to beat that out of myself in all sports, kind of. So I'm a Rodgers guy through and through. The Chiefs don't play Seattle, so I can't fan out over Russell Wilson. But I think Baker, Rodgers. I like Justin Herbert a lot. I think he's going to be a great player, so that'll
yeah,
be fun. Um, and I have a confession to make. I like Drew Lock a pretty fair amount. And with that said, he's not good, and he wasn't good at all last year. But I'm interested to see how he fares because he's had some real stinkers against the Chiefs. But a singular answer, probably that Week 1 game.
yeah. I got you. I'm a diehard KU fan. Our football team obviously is a laughing stock of everything.
We're not
But
good.
no,
And
so
that's the one
naturally,
sport I could like totally fan out about and say we are this, we are that. We
yeah.
KU, we're just not it.
Yeah, and I'm excited to cover them from this perspective and this
Mhm.
platform. I really, really am. That's something that I hope that eventually I can really kind of build into because even though they do stink, it's still nice to I want to see success as a fan. I've been a KU Jayhawk fan for forever at every sport. And so I do hope to eventually be able to cover them with some success. I do like Lance Leipold coming in. I think he's going to really have a good impact. So I'm really looking forward to that. So naturally I can't like Drew Lock just because of that. So yeah, but I would have liked to seen him have a little bit of success just because he is a local kid from Lee
Mhm.
Summit and stuff like that. But then he had to go get drafted by the Broncos. I mean, it
Yeah.
just couldn't have got any worse for him. But well, we're gonna transition sports a little bit. I'm not gonna go too long with this, but the Kansas City Royals, I do kind of want to just talk to you about it because it's local and I'm a huge baseball fan. Um, are you excited about this team? How they're playing, and what is your kind of prediction for how they may end up ending out the year?
So before the season, when spring training started, basically, I said that they were going to be 500 plus or minus like 3 games. Like
Okay.
they could win up to 84, they could lose, or they could win 78 or whatever that span is. And I still think that's the case. Like they seem like if you take that 11 game losing streak and you make them 4-7 or 3-8, they're 3, 4, 5 games above 500, playing better ball. They're playing as we're recording this. Someone tagged me in some stuff, and it was my Nicky Lopez guy. We have like a shared fandom, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was because that's like the only time he tags me. So I don't know if Nicky went yard or what happened, but it's a fun team to watch. And even if they're bad, they're going to be a very competitive bad team. Even if they're good, they're going to be a bad good team. Like they're just kind of that around 500, in my opinion, at least. They're so young still.
Yeah.
Mondesi being hurt definitely damaged them a little bit, and then coming back and immediately getting hurt again.
Um, yeah,
I feel
that's
so
a
bad for that guy. He just can't endure a and like if you move him to center field, what if he crashes into the wall, or what if he lays out for a, like, people say, oh, just move him to center field, he'll be okay, he won't get hurt. I'm like, if anything, he might get hurt more in center field than he does at shortstop. Like one big Lorenzo, you saw Lorenzo Kane, he always looked like he was dealing with something out there, and he was always getting injured and played through it.
always,
So
always.
Mondesi can't play through that type of stuff. The Kane could play through anything. Mondesi just can't. So
Yeah,
Nicky, people hate Nicky because he isn't a great hitter, but if you
yeah,
really look at it, he's somewhat close to what Infante and Escobar were giving them. If you
yeah,
take out that horrible 1 for 30 or whatever he had,
yeah,
Gold Glove caliber second baseman, good player, still young, still expanding. He's a really mature player, and I think that he's finally settling in. Witt is out of his slump, which is fantastic. Benintendi's been great. Santana's been
lights
great.
out.
Salvi's been awesome. So
Yeah,
lots of bright spots. Chris Bubich before Thursday night was on a roll. Brady Singer had a good start to the season, now kind of fizzling out. Like Duffy's been hurt. Like you add up all these things and you're like, they're right at 500 or 1 game above. And that's considering the losing streak, the injuries,
yeah,
the inconsistency, the slumps. Like you can't say, oh, well, everyone's overachieving, they're due for regression. Like they've already had the progression with all this stuff happening. So if they
for
finish
sure.
even 5 games above 500, like this team could compete for a wild card this year. And it wouldn't greatly surprise me if they did, but I'm excited for Bobby Witt Jr. to get some reps. I know that I've been rambling, but there's just so much to
Mm,
cover and talk about with this team. It's fun to watch whether they finish good or not. They're going to be a competitive team, and that's all I wanted heading into the year.
for sure. So speaking of that, I got it going right now, and it looks like the Twins did tie it up 5-5, and then Benintendi just came through again, and now it's 6-5. So I think what I'm starting to like is the fact that we almost have that no die mentality again.
Yeah.
Like there's no you can never just fully count them out of the game anymore, and I really like that. And what I kind of going into this season because of how much hype there was. I went down to spring training and being able to see Bobby Witt in person, man, that he is going to be a special, special player. And I mean, that, but he is going to be special. Just the passion he has for the game, you sense it, you see it. It's absolutely incredible. The kid is diving and laying out in spring training games and just going all out when most people know that it's just a way to get this kid was giving it all. And I love that. But I think me going into the season, I was hoping we would see more of a give some young guys the opportunity to experience the big leagues. If they have that success, then yes, we keep them and they continue to build that. If not, they treat it like how Lynch did. He comes up, he realizes his fastball's up in the zone. This is what major league hitting's like, and they send him back down to work on that, and we're seeing that happen. I'm a little bit kind of questioning the Oliveras demotion
Yeah.
because of how good he was doing. But it is what it is. It's nice to see these young players do what they're doing, and I really think the future is extremely bright. Um, I don't know how much you follow it far from a draft. Obviously the baseball's coming up, the draft's coming up. They're more and more talking about Kamar Rocker falling down to the
Mhm.
Royals. is that someone that you would just be like off the charts excited about? I mean, I honestly, if Kumar Rocker gets drafted to the Royals, I'm buying the jersey the next day. That's how excited I am. So, how do you feel about that?
Twitter will have to suspend my account. Like I will be absolutely I tweeted I will be insufferable, absolutely unbearable if they get Kumar. Like if Jack Leiter somehow felt, which there's no way, he's like the consensus top guy pretty much, especially at the pitching spot. But like if they get any of those top flight pitchers, and Kumar is looking more and more likely because people are worried about some decline in his
Yeah,
velocity or whatever, like him holding up long term. Honestly, I don't care if he holds up long term. Like, if you get 5 years of what that guy's supposed to be, that fits right in time with their timeline. If you have to move him to the bullpen after then, so
good
be it.
lands.
Because at the rate they're going right now, they're going to have tons of guys that are starters turn relievers. Like, they just, there's only going to be 5 or 6 spots. They're going to have 7 or 8 guys. I mean, maybe more than that, considering Asa Lacy's going to come up, Jonathan Bolin, Alec Marsh, Duffy, Singer, Junis, like
Yeah,
guys that are in that conversation. Then if you get rid of Duffy and Junis, you still have 5 or 6. Like it's going to be insane. I think Kumar's gonna soar through the minor league system. Like I think he's a 1.5 year guy, maybe
yeah,
2 years tops. I don't think it's going to take him very long at all, maybe even a year.
yeah,
But that would be insane. And I need to start brushing up on MLB draft. I've been doing a lot of NBA draft lately,
yeah,
but they're in a good spot. They're going to have a pretty decent pick still to where they can add to that pipeline. And Dayton's turned around the minor league system. It was going through a dry spell
yeah,
after
for
the
sure.
trades they were making. So it's looking up, man. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. And that I'm seeing, I've been really kind of studying, obviously, for the most part, up to seven, a little bit after, just because I'm like, you can kind of mix
You
some of
never
these in and
know.
out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the catcher from Louisville, and I think with Salvi kind of getting a little bit older, we're going to tend to see him transition more to that DH like we are tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'd be nice to see that kid from Louisville potentially come to the Royals. I am all for the college aspect, though. I think that we've hit on those. They are playing extremely good competition, especially. I mean, we're seeing it with the SEC. Like that's basically the minor leagues. So I like that aspect. I really do because if Kamar Rocker falls to us, I'm seeing that there's two high school shortstops that really could help push him down to us even. Both those kids, if you look at their highlights, they're freaking studs. But again, they're coming to major leagues. They're getting a load of cash. How does that affect them going into professional baseball is always a question mark. But super excited about the draft. That kind of transitions me again to another sport. I know you're a huge NBA guy. Obviously, we're talking playoffs, right? Playoffs are happening right now. You told me right before we started this, the Lakers and the Suns are getting ready to go. Anthony Davis appears to be stepping on the court. How effective he is going to be is a huge question mark. I know you cover the NBA. Kind of just give me a quick rundown. How did you get involved? Are you just a massive fan of the NBA? And what you're excited about? Just everything. Let's hear it.
Yeah, man. So I've been a big fan since I was in like I was a late bloomer. Like
Yeah,
Dwayne Wade got me into it when I was like 7 or 8. I mean, I guess that's really not late blooming. That might be early compared to some people, but irregardless, big Heat fan back in the day. Then LeBron came and I was like, yes, this is it. This is life. Like life is good, man. I'm in middle school. The Heat are winning back to backs. Then kind of kept that Heat fandom. I was a Jazz fan for a little bit. Now kind of more of a player fan now that I cover the Jazz and
yeah,
have tried to step back from that fan aspect from all teams. But man, just a huge NBA fan in general. Like there's so much aging talent, like LeBron's still fantastic, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, all those guys. Then the young talent this is the story of the playoffs, really, is the young guys really
yeah,
stepping up, win or lose, and playing really well. So I'm excited. This is the most excited I've been for a playoffs because you don't know heading in what's going to happen. Like even in the bubble last year, people kind of had a general idea of at least that West that the Lakers, like everyone knew the Lakers were going to win. Like
yeah,
assuming they were healthy, they were tailor made for something like that. This
yeah,
year, the Lakers aren't healthy. The Clippers might lose to the Mavericks. The Jazz had Mitchell get injured late, so you never know what's going to happen there. If they can fully bounce back all the way against better competition, Murray's hurt for Denver.
Yeah,
Portland can't play defense. Like then out east, Brooklyn can't play defense either. And now Philly's banged up. Milwaukee looked really, really good against the Heat, which I did not expect in 4 games. It's a lot of fun. And I think
yeah.
that this year, with it being wide open, the parity of the league is in a good spot. The future of the league is in a good spot. So if anyone's listening or watching, now's a good time to follow the NBA. You don't have to pick a team right now because there's going to be shuffling for the next few years, I think.
For sure. And I'm not a huge diehard NBA fan. I'm more of a college basketball fan. I do follow players into the NBA, obviously. And then when playoffs come around, I do pay a lot more attention just because it is exciting. And playoff basketball is completely different. So I do start to pay more attention to that. I've made it more of a habit to start watching hockey a little bit more. Just because I love playoff hockey. I think it's an exciting time. I just was going to ask you. I don't know if you saw that blow last night that just obliterated that player or not. Did you happen to catch the? Okay, if you get a chance, I'm sure it's floating around Twitter. There's a player from, I believe, I can't remember which team it actually was, but it'll definitely come up, and it looks like a linebacker is just coming down and
Oh
just lights
man.
a dude up. So yeah, I've kind of got into hockey a little bit more. But yeah, I definitely want to talk to you. I did want to talk to you a little bit about the NBA for sure. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I even appreciate you giving me this time, man, and really coming on the show, talking to me about the Chiefs. Hopefully we can do this again for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. There is even in the lull of the off season for the Chiefs right now, but there's always something going on in some sport. The Royals are going to be here for forever. It seems like the long baseball season. People complain and say it's too long. Like I'm fine with a bunch of baseball. Like if you follow it closely, then it's honestly a gift instead of something being forced upon you. For the casual fan, like I could see them shortening it in order to get maybe a bigger audience tune in each week or whatever. But always something going on, so I'd love to come back, man.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd probably lose my mind if they shorten the season because in the off season of baseball, I don't know what I'd do with my life.
Yeah.
Because it's so rough for me. I'm a huge baseball fan. I don't know if you can see everything behind me or not, but
Mhm.
diehard baseball fan for sure. So I appreciate you coming on. Guys, as always, this was incredible and have a good day.